This is Nicholas Torres here, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about how there's always an easier way to make pottery. Now, what do I mean by there's always an easier way to make pottery? Well, back when I was in my second year of pottery, I first bought my wheel and I was so excited to start making pots and stuff, but being that I was kind of forced to just shut down during the school year because I got it during 2020, I had to figure out a lot more stuff by myself, and I couldn't really experiment all too often as I wanted. So I dialed in on how can I make my pottery easier? How can I make it easier for myself? So it really came down to making things simple and just finding little things that will help me improve my wheel throwing and how my pottery looks. Those are really the only two things that it came down to for me. So, how do you make your pottery easier? Well, if you're struggling with wheel throwing, what I suggest is find one thing that is going to help you that will help with not just one thing at a time, but it will help with multiple things also. For example, I found that the way I was centering was wrong before I actually corrected it. What do I mean by the way I was centering? Well, I don't mean like how the hand movement I was placing. I mean the shape I was doing. I would try to do a real low one because I kind of saw a lot of potters, they would brace with one hand and they'll like use like a fist on top and it'll make it real flat. But the only problem with that was it made it more difficult for beginners in order to lift up the clay to their fullest potential. And so I found out that if you did a dome shape with like a 90-degree angle towards the bottom, then that's going to make your wheel throwing so much easier because half the work is already done compared to if you were already just flatten it out. Then you have to do more pulls in order to get your desired height. It's just simple things like that in order to get really just to improve your pottery and find out easier ways to make it. Another example was instead of focusing on a different like technique I could use while throwing, I literally switched up everything. I used to throw with a sponge, and before that I was having very little success. But I found out what works best for me was that if I switched my hand and I flipped it over around, then I had more success throwing. Because it was something simple that I could do, I was able to have a lot more success. And you could do this too. Now, here are some things that you could focus on in order to make your throwing easier and find out easier ways to make it. So the first one is, like I said earlier, find one thing, one small thing that will impact the rest of how you make your pottery. And I gave the example earlier, my centering. That's one thing that you could try in order to improve and make your pottery easier. Now, another thing is to test a lot of different things, pretty much at least a couple times a week. Now, before you do that though, you want to kind of think about it beforehand instead of just going right in and you're going right, just trying to just experimenting random things. If you think about it a little more before you start, then you're going to be able to dial in on what is that you need to really test. And the third thing is just kind of practice. The more you practice, the more you're going to get better at this. And so just keep on practicing and practicing. You're going to find easier ways in order to make pottery for yourself. And the good thing about pottery is you don't have to be the same like somebody else you see on Instagram or YouTube. The reason is because pottery is so free that you can find your own style, and it could be in a matter of minutes. Because just with testing, finding easier ways, and thinking through the ways that you really make pottery. Thank you. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell below, and let me know in the comments if you like this video.